Welcome to Demand Gen Confidential, the marketing podcast where we'll be talking with some of the most progressive marketers out there, diving deep into marketing tactics to help you become a better marketer. Let's jump into today's episode. I'm here with Kristina, president of Personal ABM, and she helps GTM teams progress deals of revenue of 500K plus and all deal sizes with ABM. Going to help you win accounts, even if they've gone dark, they reverse node positions, and they work with enterprises like UPS. And Kristina, is there anything else that you would like the audience to know about you?
I'm big into French culture.
Okay. Tell me about that.
So I am obsessed with France and French culture since I was a teenager, and I've gotten my 9-year-old daughter on board, and we are big into French food, French art, French architecture. She's already asking me when we can go to Paris, but I can't justify that yet when she's only 9. But I think maybe Sweet 16 will do it.
Nice. I would highly recommend it. Have you been to France?
I've been to Paris twice. I've been to Lyon. I've been to Mont Blanc. So I've been to a couple of different places.
Nice. My wife and I, we did a little road trip in France, and we were in the Dijon region, and the Michelin star restaurants, the density of those is insane. And like you can go have a amazing meal for 35 euros a person. And it's the greatest. It doesn't exist. But it's so awesome. I was like amazed. And they're blocks. There's like a block with 5 of them. And we only went to 2 and they were spectacular.
You have to go back.
Yes, I will. But I love French bread myself, baguettes or croissants. And I actually have a baguette rating system. And the best baguettes are the ones baked in France. My second tier is of quality, and I'll measure if I have a baguette, if it meets this quality. Nothing meets the ones in France, so that's just its own category. The second is, when I lived in Germany, there was a French baker down my street that would make baguettes, and that's tier 2. So a French baker in Germany, in other parts of Europe. And then I lived in Alameda in the Bay Area for a while, and there was a French trained baker that baked there, and those were really good baguettes, and that's 3rd tier. And everything after that is swill. And so it's like everything after those 3 is basically, I was trying to think last night what the equivalent is. I just say it's like domestic beer. Like I don't drink, but it's like domestic beer basically.
Oh yeah.
And I'll eat bread, but those are like the 3, because once you've had that,
you can't go back.
It's like,
no, you can't go back.
You really can't. Like it's so good. And you just put a little butter and jam on it for breakfast. And I went through a whole phase of that. It's so good. So good.
Delicious.
We're not here to talk about French bread. We're here to actually talk about ABM, because you are an ABM expert. And my first round of ABM was actually exactly like the first question that I wrote down, where it was just a targeted list of demand gen. Like we listed out all the types of companies that we wanted, and we said, this is ABM, and it was like thousands of companies. Like, why is that not ABM? And like, why do people start there?
So I think people just start there because they're already trained to do like demand gen like that, and like mass produce things, campaigns, and everyone said spray and pray is dead, but it's still alive and kicking. It is just, it's just morphed a little bit. I think there's the pressure from leadership to scale. So everyone just wants to send out as much messaging as possible. But it's really just a lot of ABM programs have become targeted demand gen. So we're doing it same thing as demand gen, just a little more targeted. But I think a lot of people are also not giving ABM the time it needs to like percolate. Like it's not something that you do in 30 days and then you drop out because it didn't work. It's a shift. It's how you're going to market as a team. So it's really not about marketing, even though everyone calls it ABM. It's really account-based go-to market. So it affects everyone from customer success to sales and marketing. So it's not just a marketing motion. It is a group motion.
there was a whole trend where everybody got so burnt on the ABM nomenclature. They went to like account-based everything, and then it morphed into go-to-market almost. Like I feel like it like was ABM, ABX, then go-to-markets. But like neither of the way that people were like doing that really describes what you're describing.
Yeah, it has to be, and like whatever you want to call it, it's fine. Just how are we going to go to market as a team, and how are we going to focus on the accounts that are the best fit for us, get the best results out of us, are going to stay the longest with us. So we want to focus on those accounts instead of being just focused on everything, which is basically what a lot of these ABM targets, they're doing that one to many, maybe one to few. And I've only spoken to a handful of people that are doing true one-to-one, because for me, one-to-one is 24 accounts, 36 accounts, depending how big your team is. And it's not a landing page that has a logo and brand persona and industry content on it. It's what's important to that named account, what's important to them, what's important to Logan and his role at XYZ, and what's important to that organization as a whole, not that they fit demographics or technographics or any of these little, like we want to pigeonhole accounts and kind of cluster them. And it's really not about that. To me, one to many and one to few are more the demand gen. And then once the account has bubbled up to the surface and says they've raised a hand, they've engaged, we've got multiple people engaged, then if they're worse going to a one-to-one, that's when we get them to a one-to-one.
Yeah, interesting. So like one of the things that I've seen is I've been on teams where we've wanted to go almost one-to-one or one to a couple, but then I think FOMO hits in of we're missing a whole section of the market. So we're just not going to do that, but we're going to say that we're doing it. Is there a big fear of like taking that plunge and say, we're going to go after Marriott or something like that?
Well, there totally is, but I think you have to do some like internal work to see if it makes sense. So do you have a unique point of view? Do you have a point of view about your business as a whole? Do you have a point of view about that actual account? Are you deep enough entrenched into what's going on with them to even justify going after them? And do you have a customer story that you can tell in conjunction with that? And to me, this type of that one-to-one, the account has to be worth at least 6 figures or more. If you're selling $15,000 sales and marketing tool, one-to-one's probably not going to make sense for you. You're probably good to one to few and one to many. But I'm talking 6, 7 figures. That one-to-one is really important, especially if you're going to do it for an expansion play or retention and expansion play, because there's no way to get deep enough into an account when you have that many people on the buying committee. You need to get into as many departments as possible. You need to get multi-threaded, the whole story of that account. But you have to justify it before you do it. You can't just pick it because we want that logo. You have to have the data behind it. You have to have a customer story behind it to support it. And you have to know knowledge about the company. Is that company ready to invest in what you sell? Are they culturally a good cultural fit for your company? Are they operationally aligned with you, executionally aligned with you? Have they done their homework or their necessary steps in order to adopt your solution? Because otherwise, even if you land them, they might churn and you spent all this money to land them and you wind up losing money at the end.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I want to pick on a little bit of the piece of, are they ready to buy your solution? Because I think I see it more and more now, the intent piece. And it's like, people are now calling them signals. And first it was intent data. Now it's signals. And like, how do you find out? Let's say you're going one-to-one, right?
Yeah.
How do you start to actually think about whether or not they're ready? Like, an account that you're going to target is potentially worth targeting.
So to me, intent is great and has a place, but I think it only really has a place for the top of the funnel. And it doesn't, there's so many issues with it, but the fact that it's lagged because everyone has it now. So everyone's responding to it the same way. They engage with this piece of content. We're going to send them, this is their next step in their journey. So you're doing that, but so is your competitors, or so are your competitors. So to me, you have to look at your customers and see which ones are the best fit, which ones are giving you the most ROI, and then work backwards from there. So that you can support that one-to-one motion. So I always say that when someone is thinking about adopting an ABM program, they should start with customers first so that they can test it and tweak it and make it learn as much as they can from it before rolling out to net new logos. It's doable to do ABM for net new. It's just a lot longer, a lot harder, and a lot more labor intensive and resource intensive. And to me, if you're going to go this way, you have to do your homework. We can't just buy a tool and say, we're going to do this now. That's not how it works.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's start with customers first. We always say that in marketing, but in this case, if you're going to go one-to-one ABM, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're suggesting like you probably already have to have a couple of the customers that you would want to do this for.
Yes. Most
so
likely.
You're not like, yeah. And so then are you suggesting that you would go look to implement one-to-one ABM for expansion first and then work back to new logo? Or am I putting words?
No, that makes sense. Unless there's a bigger issue somewhere, unless there's a bigger issue when it comes to revenue for your organization and you've gotten the CRO involved, you've gotten marketing involved, you've got customer success, and you're like, okay, our biggest red in the business, our biggest area of concern is churn, or it's net new logos, or it's going up market, whatever that issue is. I think that's where you should, whatever the bigger issue is, because you might have issues in all of them, but whatever is the biggest like revenue leak, adopt ABM to fix that leak first, and then you can scale it out. Because I think we are so conditioned as marketers to scale everything. And I think you can really only scale one to few, one to many. Scaling one-to-one is next to impossible. Even with ChatGPT and all the other AI tools, you're still not going to be able to interpret. Like AI cannot interpret how all this data translates to what's important to that account. It's a stepping stone. It's a tool you can use and get a lot of insights into with it, but it's not going to create custom content that actually makes sense for that account.
Yeah. So then I want to get like an example of going in for, you have a customer and fixing leaky or going to expansion first in an ABM style, that way that you like how you think about that. And then also, how would you think about, let's say that you have a really great motion for the expansion. Now you want to go get some new logos with it. Like what does the expansion, like leaky bucket thing look like that you would address or go with?
So when that happens, I think that we need to, let's start with the customer side first. So we need to make sure that we are creating that buying vision for that customer. Because typically, what I've heard a lot of is in SaaS and in tech in general is that maybe they only sell into one department or maybe one part of a giant conglomerate. So you have to create that buying vision across the organization and make that your solution embedded into what they're doing so you can drive that greater customer lifetime value. And you want NRR to be your North Star to make sure that you are achieving what you set out. So it's really how you're changing buyers' view and how they are interacting with you. So the ones that are showing greater use of your tool, greater adoption of your tool, they're getting the most success from your tool. Those are the types of accounts that you want to look for so that you can try to see what makes them a good fit and roll that out to other customers, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. Have a buying vision. I'm going to come back to the NRR because that's going to be a good one for our next topic. But the buying vision, to be honest, I've been in marketing a while and I don't do one-on-one ABM. So part of this is a learning experience for me that I'm picking your brain.
Yeah. So I know it sounds out there. It's more of, how we want to also become partners with our clients. We don't want to be a vendor. We don't want to be someone that's just a tool we buy and we have to buy and that's it. So you want to set up this kind of relationship with them. This is the problem we see that we can fill for you. This is how we're going to fill it. And this is what we see our relationship looking like in the next 18 months, 24 months, 5 years, and how this can be a journey together as opposed to we're a tool that when budgets get cut, we're the first to go because you don't use us very well. You don't use us enough to justify spend that hasn't been adopted. It may be just they're not getting the ROI. So they're like, okay, we're going to just cut you. We want to make sure that you're embedded in as many parts of the business. If you're selling a sales and marketing tool, you don't want to just talk to sales. You don't want to just talk to marketing. You want to talk to leadership in all those departments. You want to talk to customer success. You want to make sure that all these different departments see the value of your solution and the pain of possibly losing that solution so that it does become embedded. It does become a bit part of their everyday use. And so that they become a long-time customer or a valued customer. That way you can get those, whatever learnings you have from that, you can scale into that one to few and one to many.
Yeah. Okay. And so you want to have your internal team think about that so that you can go after this account, whether it's new or, like in this case, it's expansion or saving. Like you want to get together internally to figure out that and then go to the customer to talk about that.
Correct.
Yeah, that's it. And is that a pretty common play that you see in companies doing ABM now? Doing that.
I think a lot of people want to do it for net new. And I think that's why so many of them fail, because they're just basically, again, putting ABM in demand gen by using a tool or by targeting better or layer on intent that maybe is lagged or doesn't make sense or all your competitors are responding to. So I think that's what happens too, is that they don't get the go-to market motions down. And so they're just scaling and retrofitting over existing processes, content and marketing and outreach instead of tweaking what they have first and fixing that, again, with that pressure to scale.
Yeah. Interesting. We talked about, so that's the buying, going to a customer and having that fit. Like, how do you do this for new logo?
For new logo?
So let's say you have 5 customers that you're like, okay, this is working for us. We're going to go acquire a new customer like this. How does that work?
So as long as there's some kind of strategic priority in place, that's the kind of the first thing that I look at for an organization if we're going to do new logo. So if you're selling a particular solution, let's say you're selling conversational AI, because I have an example of that. Okay. If that organization is not adopted AI at all, or they are not even, it's not even on their radar, it's going to be impossible. They have to have made the cultural shifts and the technology shifts internally, the operational shifts internally before that even makes sense for you. So that's usually what I use for the initial kind of how we're going to go for a net new logo. And you do layer on all this information that you have. You can layer on intent as a starting point. But what is that intent? What does that mean? How do we interpret that intent? Are they researching? Are they already halfway through their buyer journey and they're just going to RFP right away? Are they having problems somewhere? Like, we need to use them as stepping stones and figure out what's going on. And that's where AI can come into play to do some research for the organization. What are they talking about on their executive leadership calls and any kind of statements that they're putting out in their press releases or things like that. And we can use that as a stepping stone and kind of translate that information and kind of interpret that information to see where they're looking to make these shifts. This is how we can play a part in that shift. And that's how you become embedded. That's how you become more of a must-have versus a nice-to-have at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's likely a lot easier in that if it's a public company, because there are a few really large private companies where this would make sense, but they also put out press releases and stuff. So,
but you can search their YouTube videos. You can search their any kind of content they're putting out, or even just if you want to do really an easy one and you don't want to get too fancy, you can just follow them on LinkedIn, some of the leadership, and see what's going on with them. What are they liking? What are they commenting on? What are they reading? Can you see any of that? It doesn't have to be super high tech.
Yeah. But in this strategy, you got to be in it for the long haul. Then, like, this has to be, you can't just on a whim decide that this is something that you're going to do.
No. And you have to know that you're going to do this for at least 3 to 6 months before you start saying we have to change things or that we have to abandon it. And it has to be like, first, before you even do that, you have to know that everyone's on board internally, because if just sales is bought in or just marketing's bought in or just customer success is bought in, you're not going to get the ROI. And that's when people are like, oh, we don't need to do this ABM thing anymore. And it's not a strategy. It's not a tactic. It's a strategy. So how are we going to, as a team, get to the ultimate goal, which is revenue, so that we increase revenue on all fronts? Because at the end of the day, that's really what matters. Sales doesn't really care about MQLs. Customer success doesn't care about those. They don't care about like downloads and emails and things like clicks and all these other things. They don't care about the vanity metrics. So then in order to get buy-in, you have to speak their language. And if you're not speaking revenue language to them, it's going to be much harder for you as a marketer to say, this is something that we should adopt as an organization, because they're not going to understand it.
Yeah. And it probably, like, in the way that you're describing, this really can't be a one department it says we're going to go in this direction or recommendation. Like,
yeah, it
marketing,
can. It's just not going to be as successful. Like,
yeah, because like you have the marketing, the sales part. There's probably some product in there that might have to get developed. And can you support that?
Yeah.
And so I want to use that to segue to the next topic of like, how does an entire company with all departments roll around this? And you mentioned that NRR should be the North Star metric. And I find that interesting because at a few companies I've worked at, that's a CS metric.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that obviously has to be driven now that everybody's on board. So do you have a recommendation of how do you start thinking about cross-functional in this, and why NRR as a metric?
So to me, if this is something that your organization is going to adopt, I would say that roll up to the CRO or whoever's in charge of sales or whoever the highest in that role, because you're going to be impacting ARR, GRR, and NRR. And why I say NRR is because I think that's where it should start before you start rolling it out to everything else, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. GRR?
Gross. I think it's gross.
Gross recurring revenue. Is that
that's
a gross? Yeah.
Okay. I use these acronyms and I forget what they mean.
Marketers, we love acronyms.
Yeah.
And jargon. So all good. That's like our second pastime.
Yeah, pretty much.
You have like actual marketing, then you have meetings, which we love, acronyms we love, and then planning.
Oh, planning. Yes.
Those are the four pillars. The last three are the most important. Actual marketing is not the most important.
It's all the planning to do the marketing. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. At any rate, so we've got GRR. So you want to start with NRR. So let's walk me through why NRR. Why do you want to start with that?
Because I think I wouldn't say the easiest, but it's a great way to see what's happening with the customers. Like the customer success team will help you figure out what's happening, because if sales didn't set them up correctly or marketing didn't set them up correctly, that's where it's going to show. Yeah. Because marketing has got to help, sales has got to help customer success. And if there's a disconnect from the start, the last people that have to touch that client or customer are the customer success team. So they're going to help you figure out where your message or where your content or where your positioning is going wrong, and how we're not continuing that conversation from initial outreach or initial engagement all the way till the close and beyond. Because if you want to have long-term clients, you have to make sure you're getting that. So they're going to tell you like, maybe sales oversold this, or sales didn't say that this was going to happen. Like it wasn't conveyed to the customer correctly of what our capabilities are and what success was going to look like for them, and what success was going to look like for them now and in the future or 5 years from now. So I think if we can hone that in and optimize that as much as possible, you're never going to get it perfect. It's always going to be learning. You're going to be learning, and tighten that up as much as possible. I think it'll make marketing's job easier, and then in turn sales. So like every interaction that happens, every account experience, every touch point has to all connect the whole system, the whole circle of the customer life cycle and the customer journey. Otherwise, you're going to have a churn rate issue. So you can have a giant pipeline, but if they're churning out the end, you might be losing money.
Yeah. And I guess that would also be the reason why they're churning. Is it because they were oversold, or is there a product market fit issue? At a certain point, like at a certain scale, if you're talking one-to-one, you probably don't have product market fit issues, but maybe for that particular customer, but not generally, I would think.
Yeah, hopefully not.
do you have, once you get to the execution point, how should teams all work together? Because I have found in my career, it's very difficult with everybody's different priorities. Like the organization may say, yes, we want to do this, but there's always little day-to-day stuff that ends up scattering people once you get into the heart of like execution. Do you have advice for teams that would need, or that advice for teams to get them to work cohesively for the 3 to 6 months in looking at acquiring new customer or accounts like this in this ABM format?
So I know a lot of people say that, oh, we're aligned. Alignment is we're all aligned. We're all on the same page, but we meet quarterly. That no, marketing has to sit in on sales calls. Sales and marketing have to sit in customer success calls. Everyone's got to know what's happening. And I'm not saying every person on marketing or every person in sales, but like leadership should know what the heck is going on in all these departments. And in a perfect world, there would be like a monthly check-in to make sure that the messaging is on point from start to finish, or not start to finish, start to like fruition. And then, what's working, what's not working, where are we seeing issues, what can we fix before it gets too big? Because if we wait until the quarter or 6 months into this program to assess what's going on, you could have missed a bunch of opportunities to fix something quicker. And then that's where I think if you don't do that like monthly check-in, that's why people try to adopt ABM, and then they are saying it's not working because we're not aligned, even though we said we were aligned. Like we're aligned in theory, but are we actually aligned as know what's going on?
Yeah. So in that whole check-in process, like how do you create, or do you have benchmark metrics that you recommend to clients that they use, or do you have recommendations of how to think about creating those benchmark metrics to see if things are moving in the right direction?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I think an account-based approach, account-based go-to-market, whatever your company calls it, because I know there's a million acronyms for it. I think we really have to think about how are we thinking about our business to ensure that we have a strong point of view. We're coming to each interaction, each buyer or customer with a point of view about their business. How are we packaging solutions together? That's what we have to think about. How are we communicating that value across the board, not just on the marketing side, not just on the sales side? How do you structure our team so that we are moving together? There has to be internal change manager for a lot of this, because a lot of companies are still siloed, even though they say they're not. How do you even compensate your SDR team? Because I've seen a lot of people that have compensated their SDR team on meetings booked, even if it's not with anyone of value, anyone in their industry. It's still happening, by the way, which is scary to me. How are we going to make sure that our content and our interactions and the account experiences that we deliver are like uniform from the start to that finish? Like we have to ask ourselves all these questions and what makes sense for us as an organization. And there's a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself, but you can do a couple at a time. It's not like we need to fix everything all at once, because that's too much work. And that's why things get dropped to the wayside. Oh, it's not working. Well, because you tried, but you bit off more than you could chew. And there's a lot of moving parts in this whole thing. And there's a lot of opinions on the matter. So there's no way that you can do something this big if you do not have buy-in from everyone.
Yeah. Do people employ SDRs what's an SDR's role in this scenario? Or is it normally the AE or account manager in that case, if they're a customer, that's doing the multi-threading that's happening?
It's AEs and anybody who's on the account side, whether that's customer success, account management. You can do it for the SDRs. You want them to be aware of what's happening, but to train them on this process, not only because they're usually new to the whole process of selling to begin with.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things are something that a more experienced person might know, because they're going to be talking about revenue for the business as whole, as opposed to revenue for themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Interesting. This is like a whole different world for me, because like I come from the one to many, and I always thought that ABM, and maybe that I'm like jumping back up to our first topic of everybody was doing ABM, but it was really just creating a targeted ICP. And that to me was always a weird thing because like I started in sales. So you always think about having a targeted ICP because you can't go after everything. So it was like, oh, ABM is, I'm going to go after just manufacturers. And that's not the case. How do people avoid that pitfall and using that nomenclature? Or is that an okay ABM style to run?
I think too many people are relying on like the ABM tech platforms that are out there. I'm not a big fan of any of them. They might have a place but to me, they're still demand gen, just more
Yeah.
targeted. And they're really clunky. They're very expensive. And I've seen too many people that are not getting the ROI that they want out of them. And that's a lot of the big reason why they abandon the whole account-based motion is because, oh, we invested in this platform and we're not getting any results. It must not be working. And it's not that it's the tool's fault necessarily. It's that you didn't have the strategy in place before you implement the tool. So you basically retrofitted the tool on what you were already doing, like processes, content, messaging, outreach, the whole thing, and just putting a platform on it and thinking it was going to work better. And it tightened down what you were doing, maybe a little bit, and maybe a little more focused, but it's still the same thing. It's just using a different acronym.
Yeah. And for some of that, my opinion of it and what I have seen is it works better for perpetually online industries. So really a lot of tech and software and SaaS, selling to SaaS. Once you get into construction, retail, manufacturing, all those industries, it's hard because they don't live online.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like you go look at their websites, the websites aren't selling to people. It's talking about what the company is because customers don't go there per se. So that's not their stuff. So I find that sometimes some of the tech platform stuff works better in some industries and not others.
Yeah. And I think also, I think it's almost, let's make sure we have our account-based strategy. It's never going to be perfect, but let's have a good foundation before we invest in that tool. And I think too many people are doing it first and then having the strategy be led by the tool versus the other way around.
Yeah, that's actually one of my issues generally about tools. I was in marketing ops for a while at an engineering-led company, and they always had the build versus buy debate. And I learned there that adopting a tool is hard or it's not hard, but it's risky because you start to think of the world the way they want you to, rather than how your business operates and should be generating revenue. Yeah. And so, but as a software company, you want that. So it's like there's a push and pull there. HubSpot wants you to think inbound. I know they just changed it at their latest inbound, but they want you to think of the world that way. But if you're, in this case, doing ABM, you can't think of the world that way per se. There's a little bit more of an outbound approach. So
yeah, it's a different mindset if you've always been doing inbound to switch to that or vice versa. So there's a learning curve.
For sure. Good. Is there anything else that you would leave the audience with that would say, we're a demand gen, we've got a few enterprise clients, and we're thinking about going in this route? What types of things or advice would you have for them if they're starting to toy with this idea?
Is their organization ready? Are they aligned first internally before they adopt this? Because I've seen way too many ABM programs, ABM initiatives fail because it's just a marketing play, or it's just account-based sales, and we're just going to not involve marketing at all. Make sure that everyone is more than aligned, because otherwise the whole program could fall by the wayside because you're not getting the ROI. And marketing could do everything in the world and be perfect and giving them great leads over to, or great information over to sales. But if they are not continuing that conversation, they're not delivering the same account experience, they're not treating every customer interaction the same as marketing had, then there's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a drop ball. And it's the same way from sales to customer success. So we have to make sure that we are doing like pilot test run type of thing before we like invest in this 6-figure tool, or we invest in 1 million different tools to do this. Or do you even have the customer story or a use case for this to be adopted? Because again, like I said, if you're selling a $15 or $20,000 and that's a solution and that's your biggest ACV, then you're fine probably with one-to-few, one-to-many demand gen is going to work for you. But a more targeted one-to-one and more personal one-to-one, that's for those bigger deal sizes. So it doesn't always make sense for everyone. And there are different kinds of ABM depending on where your ACV fits and where your revenue leaks are.
Interesting. Is your organization ready? Do you have a high enough ACV, and where are your revenue leaks? That's probably, revenue leaks probably doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do ABM because you have revenue leaks, but
no, but that would give you some kind of focus of maybe we should start there and apply that to that first, and then we can scale it out. I think throw out the we're scaling this right away type of mindset, and I think you will be more successful.
I'm always at places that are like, they do it for a week and I'm like, we got to scale it.
Yeah.
We haven't closed anybody yet, but we got to scale it.
No, don't do that.
That's not what you're supposed to do.
No, okay. I would wait at least 3 to 6 months before we decide that we're going to put a little more fuel on this fire and scale it.
Yeah, that is always, it's tricky. It is tricky. But good, Kristina. I appreciate you taking the time to walk the audience through ABM and how to do this, as well as myself. This was a very good learning experience for me. And is there anywhere you would like the audience to connect with you?
LinkedIn would be the best place. And then our website, pitfallabm.com. That's a great place. I live on both. But you probably see me more on LinkedIn.
Awesome. We will link all of that in the show notes. And again, thank you for the time.
Appreciate it, Logan. Thank you.